In Module 2, we'll look at your influence styles indicator model. In Module 3, you'll be able to see the results from the influence styles indicator that you took. But for Module 2, we're going to focus on understanding the model behind it, particularly the orientations, influence styles, and specific influence behaviors you can engage in order to improve your ability to influence others. Of course, remember that to influence effectively, it's important to consider the context. Done well, the ability to influence with effectiveness, the consequence will be that you'll build trust, respect, and connection with others. As we look at the model, know that this is, in fact, the model that guided both the survey and the interpretation of the results of your survey that you've already taken. In this model, it's important to understand a couple of different elements. The model itself is fairly simple. The first thing to understand is that there are two primary orientations in this model to influence, one being advocating and the other being uniting. The advocating orientation has a feel of push. You're pushing your ideas, your thoughts, your perspective onto the other person and hoping that influences them. And it causes them in some ways to adopt your particular view of the world. And the uniting orientation, it's much more of a pull. You're trying to pull another person's thoughts, ideas, perspectives, and in some ways desires towards how you see things. But it's much more of an invitation and a pull. In the negotiating style, it's not a full orientation because it draws from both advocating and uniting. So both of those seem to come down and begin to influence that particular style. The advocating orientation is drawn primarily from the asserting style and the rationalizing style. The uniting orientation draws from inspiring and bridging. Asserting style is often characterized by debate or insisting that your point of view is heard. This can be either in the proposal that you make for a certain kind of idea or concept, or in some ways it is the mirror image is the level of opposition and your ability to voice your opposition to ideas and direction proposed by others. The rationalizing style is a style that's very common in almost every organization today. The rationalizing style draws on your ability to advocate by using logic, reason, and data. This is kind of bread and butter in the World Bank. However, oftentimes we overuse this approach and we'll keep providing our rationale for influencing another person and they'll come up with their own counter argument. And what we tend to do is respond, again, with an even stronger set of reason and logic. That often provokes an escalating response. So we can utilize rationalization as a means of influence, and sometimes we're a bit naive about thinking about its impact. In the inspiring style, this really is about what's possible. Can you see a potential? And can you encourage others to see the potential in a situation in a way that moves them to act and shifts the way they think about things? In the bridging style, in particular, you're trying to connect. This is about building relationships. This is about finding common ground. This is about being willing, in some ways, to be vulnerable in circumstances. And of course, negotiating is about drawing on the two. You can advocate through compromises. You're able to build a workable plan by satisfying some of your interests and some of the other interests that seem to move both of us forward. Inserting style, it's quite common to find yourself insisting that your ideas are heard, or countering that with really being able to challenge in an effective way, sometimes in a stubborn way. But it also relies on, oftentimes, the formal authority that exists, the structure, and falls back on rules, procedures, policies, really as a way of influencing others. It's very common in the inserting style to use power as the dispense of rewards and consequences. And oftentimes, the language you'll hear in asserting behavior is insisting on your ideas, being certain, You'll call upon the position and authority that you've been granted, or if the policy states a particular point of view or path to follow. It's also quite common to engage in exchange statements when you're asserting. If you do X, then I will do Y. Or if you don't do X, I will do Z. This is a common method when using the asserting style. In the rationalizing style, we rely on reason, and reason is critical to our ability to influence. Constantly drawing on facts or logic to support your argument, using expert views or historical data, those are all elements that we do in order to create the influence we seek using this particular style. And the way it sounds is often based on data, the analysis, the logic, drawing on authorities, not the authority, but authorities and experts to back your opinion. And in this particular style, we will also rely on what information can be gathered or what information needs to be gathered in order to support a logical, convincing decision to be made. And as we said before, in the negotiating style, you're willing to make concessions. You're looking for what can move things forward. There's not an insistence on your point of view, and you're not surrendering to the other person's interests in a particular situation. Exchange language is very common here, trying to find agreement, being able to make trade-offs, being able to show that you can concede. And even if the concession is a minor point for you, it's really important and really effective when engaging the negotiating style. To concede, it invites reciprocity from the other party. And the language often sounds like these kinds of things. When you engage in inspiring style, again, what's critical here and what's really important to influence is, can you and the other or others you're trying to influence see the potential in the situation? What's possible for yourself and for others and for you collectively? And being able to embed emotion into what you say is so important. In this particular style, the use of stories, metaphors, and shared history is so important to be able to inspire. This is the kind of language that we'd often find when you see someone using the inspiring style. In the bridging style, alignment and connection is critical to influencing others. What you want to be doing is pulling people towards your point of view. You want to listen carefully. You're attempting to build relationships and trust and strengthen the coalition that you want. Looking to common ground between you and the people or person that you're trying to influence is so important. Being able to disclose or reveal where you might have a weakness in your particular point of view turns out to be very effective in building trust and enhancing your bridging style. You do want to really understand the other person when using the bridging style. You draw out the intentions and goals and positions of others. You can see and appreciate their point of view, the situations and difficulties they face, and you're really trying to understand them at both an intellectual and emotional level. The language that accompanies this style often looks like this. It's important to note that influencing and using these styles comes with a certain kind of responsibility. Used in the wrong way, any one of these styles can feel like manipulation to those around us. The manipulation ultimately is destructive to trust and building relationship, which is critical to our ability to influence. And oftentimes asserting can feel or appear to others like we're bullying them. We're trying to push them into accepting your point of view no matter what. Rationalizing, when we're over-relying on data and facts, and it's our data and facts, and leaving out or ignoring other people's data and facts can feel like it's dismissing them and their point of view. When we're solely focused on negotiation and negotiating style, for some people this feels like haggling. It's always an exchange, tit for tat, and it's a transaction, and that often is an unsatisfying kind of relationship. It doesn't necessarily build the trust and relationship we seek. Sometimes when we engage in bridging behavior and the bridging style and overuse that, because it has an element of understanding people at not only the intellectual level but the emotional level, can feel like you're attempting to get something that you can use to manipulate them later. And inspiring, oftentimes overused, feels like you're not grounded in reality and you're missing the point and you're unable to see things as they are. And so it just seems like pure fantasizing. Important to pay attention to these, both in our behavior and as we look at the behavior of others. So as each of these particular styles has a shadow side, rationalizing being dismissing, asserting being bullying, negotiating being waffling or trading, bridging can feel like manipulating, inspiring can feel like fantasizing. It's important to consider what's your role and how you can shift the behavior. So if you find that people have an experience of being dismissed or discounted, what can you do? You can start to listen for other people's feelings. You can seek that as you do this. That ought to influence the other in a different way. When people are feeling bullied or intimidated, and the counterpart to that is oftentimes they'll become argumentative. But for you, what might be useful to do is recognize that. And first thing is, don't take it personally, but look to what else are you missing? What do they have that you need? And what do they bring to the table that you want to appreciate and take a value with? As we look at negotiating, when people don't see what you see, when people aren't tuned into the exchange that you're looking for, don't discount their confusion. Try and understand them, try and get greater clarity about what it is that's important to them, as well as being able to clarify what's important to you. And where can you compromise? Where can you give? In this case, really what's important is tuning into the notion of reciprocity. Can you give to get? And as you look at bridging, and where bridging can feel a bit like manipulation might take place, you want to be able to stay engaged with people. You want to be both seeking their input, their position, their thoughts, but also trying to bring transparency from your side. When it's constantly about inquiring and understanding them, there's an imbalance that people will often feel. So sometimes if you overplay this style, it's really important to recognize that and then to begin to expose, in some way, your own thinking and your own desires in the circumstance. And in inspiring, when it can seem like fantasizing, what you want to be able to do is to be able to ground what you say, not only in the picture that you draw of the future or the potential that's available, but an understanding of what the ground truth is, what's happening now, and your ability to convey both an understanding of the constraints and difficulties we face, as well as that and very enticing future we all want is so important. So once again, in this particular model, what you'll see as you look through your results are different emphasis on a particular style. You'll have a strong preference for one style over another. Maybe you'll have a secondary preference. But you'll understand that what we mean when we're talking about asserting or rationalizing, and that both of those are in the advocating orientation. And you'll understand something about the inspiring and bridging styles and how they seek to have a uniting orientation. And finally, the application of a negotiating style. Each of these has their strengths, and each of these has a shadow side. As we look at your results in the next module, we'll be able to help you think about how you can increase both your skill and the range of your styles.